Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to a Fresh Stories book chat, book corner. It's been like 100 episodes and we still haven't figured out a title. But I'm laughing because today's guest is someone I am fangirling over. I'm very excited to have her on. And I was 3 minutes late to the podcast episode, which I'm a pretty tough podcast producer on myself. And I like to always be on time, but the groceries came at exactly the same time that the guest was here. Yet today's guest understood exactly what I was talking about because we have, well, I'm going to let her introduce herself and explain why she knows what I'm talking about. Who are you, today's guest?
I'm Corinne Lowe, and I'm an economist who studies women's lives. And on the cover of my book, it's having it all and how it's often too much. And you see the groceries are there, and
Yep.
dinner on fire is also there because that's what having it all is like sometimes. So,
A crying
believe
baby.
me,
Yeah, all of it.
I understand.
All of it. Well, if you have followed me for 2 seconds, you know that I'm a little bit obsessed with domestic equity, inequity, domestic labor, emotional labor, Eve Rodsky, fair play, all of it. Laura Danger has been a longtime friend of mine. So when I came across Corinne's stuff, I I'm gonna be honest. First, I was jealous because you have this amazing book, and I was like, "Damn, she did the book I've always wanted to write." But I am not an economist or PhD by any means. So please tell us, I want to know. I want to dig deep. This is where my brain goes. What made you so interested in this?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And the book came out of me trying to answer the question for myself, why am I so tired?
Often.
And what I found by studying women's time use is that it is a uniquely difficult time to be a working woman, to be a working mother, because our gender roles have converged in the workplace and they haven't converged at home. Men are still doing the same amount of housework as they did in the 1970s. And then you add to that we spend twice as much time with our kids as our own parents did. And it just doesn't add up. And that's why we're so exhausted and so burned out. And so I was kind of hit rock bottom of being deeply burned out, being the primary breadwinner and doing the majority of the home production, commuting 2.5 hours to my job.
Hmm.
And it just wasn't sustainable. And I made some big changes, which will be familiar to the listeners to this podcast. For me, it was getting divorced and changing cities to try to reclaim my time. And then when I started studying the data and showing how it wasn't adding up for women, I just wanted to share that with people. And so that they could also, figure out how to claw back some of their time and happiness. And it's not going to be divorce isn't the right answer for everyone, even though I
Nope.
know, we're
Nope.
big
Not everybody.
advocates of
Yeah.
that here for people who need that.
Mm-hmm.
But, there might be other deals that you're in that
Mm-hmm.
aren't working where, maybe you're leaning into a career that's actually not giving back to you. And maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
time to reconsider that. Or maybe there's other relationships in your life where you need to renegotiate those deals. So the book is all about giving women those data-driven strategies to try to get more from their lives.
Okay, first of all, I want to put you in my pocket and carry you around with me all day because I love your energy so much and I love everything you're talking about here. Um, if you're looking at the cover of the book, I just want to just break this down for listeners here. We have a bikini, we have a crying baby, groceries, keys, a phone, the dinner on fire, the notifications. This is like the inside of somebody's head. So props to
Mhm.
your designer on the cover, first of all. But I want to go back even more because yes, right, this is going to be a question that you and I ask myself the same. I literally bought the Second Shift book, the Housechild's book, like 2 days after my first son was born, because I was like, "What the
Mhm.
fuck is happening here?"
What is
Right?
happening?
Right.
Yes.
But were you a kid that, like me, that was a nerd about families and studying people?
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge nerd about so many things, but I think for me, feminism just meant equality. I literally, like, when I was in seventh grade, created a petition because the boys did wrestling and the girls did aerobics. And I was like, this isn't fair. We should be doing the same thing, right? So it was all about like equality. And so then, exactly as you said, like for me to then get into a marriage, have children, and then be like, what the hell? Like, how are things so unequal when I am the person who studies this and I should know better? And how am I falling into these gender roles, including when, for me, I became the sole breadwinner at some point, and then I was still doing the majority of the parenting. And it's like, just what is happening? And
Yeah.
so some of my research then became me search, to try to understand like what
Yeah.
was happening and just to recognize, for women and to name that like there sometimes are those real differences because, like, you carried a baby inside of you and you give birth to
Mhm.
it and you feel this incredible call. Like, you never feel like more of a like a mammal, like a, primal
Yeah.
being, that
Yep.
when you're feeding a baby, right? Um, and just to say, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to feel called to those things, but there is something wrong with systems that don't support you and with
Mm.
a partner who is not providing in their own ways. And it doesn't have to be the identical ways to how you're providing, but
Right.
providing in their own ways, whether that is supporting your ability to, feed the kid and take care of the house, or whether that's supporting your ability to have a career because your career is actually really meaningfully contributing to the household, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I think I see it differently now than I did when I was, nerd junior, right?
Mhm.
But just because it doesn't need to be, identical or 50-50, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be fair. It doesn't mean that both
Mhm.
people shouldn't get their needs met.
Yeah, I literally could talk to you all day about this. I think that there's a common bond, and not bond. There's a common moment, I will say, that happens to a lot of women like you and I had, where we have a baby and then we go, "What is happening here?" Right? I was a teacher. I had a business, all these things, right? And yet I'm the only one that knows XYZ. I'm the only one that's doing. And my big wake up moment was when I posted in a Facebook group for moms and said, "Is anybody else doing everything in their household?" And people were like, "What do you mean everything?" And I was like, "No, no, I mean like everything." And people were like, "That's not really normal." And I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." Right? But it took me years to unravel that, to
Yeah.
figure out what was happening. So, can you talk us through the book, right? So if nobody's heard of this and this is the first
Yeah.
time, what is having it all dive into?
Yeah. Well, first, I have to unpack something that you said because when you talked about commenting in that Facebook group, it
Yeah.
might not be normal, right? We know that there are extremes of the spectrum, and there's a reason you and I are both
Yep.
divorced, right? So it might not be normal to be doing literally everything. But notice that Facebook group was entirely women
Women.
seeking
Yeah.
answers about how to care for their children.
Yep.
All of the women have the stack of baby books that's this high, and we're reading and we're digesting them to our
Mhm.
male partners, who, by the way, can also read, right?
Mhm.
So even though you were on one extreme end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
carrying the majority of the load, that is very normal, actually, and
Yes, and
all too
yes.
common for
And
women.
actually, before I have you go into the book, I wanna say the importance of this book is that we need to be having these conversations, right? And that I always say gossip is really important, good gossip, right? Because it shares history, it shares
Yeah.
commonalities. That's why people survived back in our ancestors' days. And so it's really important to be normalizing the fact that this is not okay anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what this book does. Okay, so now take us into the book, Dr.
Yeah.
Lil.
So the book is based on 15 years of my research as an economist about the economic lives of women. And that's studying everything from workplace discrimination for women not getting the same job offers as men do, to studying what I call reproductive capital, which is the economic value of your fertility and how IVF and fertility extending technologies impact our life choices, to studying time use within the household and showing that women who are primary breadwinners do twice as much cooking and cleaning as their lower earning male partners. And that's what shows you it is gender roles because it's not just based on who earns more in the household or who's better at something. It is still following those gender roles, right? So I put all of that research into the book to answer that question. Why are you so tired? To show how this is a uniquely difficult time to be a working woman in America, but also in a lot of other countries too,
Mhm.
around the world. And then I use the framework of the tools of my trade, economics, to give us strategies to get more happiness, time, meaning, and fulfillment out of our lives. And the key framework there is that you are here to maximize what we call your utility function, just the sum total of your joy, meaning, and contentment over the lifetime. It's like your personal video game score at the end of your
A
life.
Sims, you're a Sims.
And only you know what you get points for, right? And the key thing about it is it's that deep meaning at the end of your life where when you're adding up that tally at the end of your life, you wouldn't assign points for, oh, my neighbor approved of what my kid wore to school, right?
Right,
So
right.
we have to tune out some of those things like what other people think of us or making other people happy and tune into what really brings us meaning, what really fulfills us. And that's the framework that I use And then I go through kind of renegotiating some of those bad deals at work and at home so that we can make changes, not just to lean in to a system that's not working, but to level up and to remove some of the constraints that we're facing so that we can be a little bit less tired.
I just think you're brilliant. I don't know what else to say. I think you deserve some sort of like Nobel Peace Prize because I I I think framing it from that perspective for this generation of women who we've been working our asses off
Yeah.
to make money and build homes and all these things is so smart because I'm sick of parenting books. I've done the
Mhm.
parenting books, right?
Mhm.
I'm a single woman at this point with 2 kids, but I love business, right? And so
Mhm.
I will read a book that like this that was fantastically written with that framework of business because we are our own companies.
Your household is an enterprise, and that's what I talk about,
Right.
like, for many of us, the problem is that we interviewed for the position of boyfriend when we needed to be hiring a co-CEO of the household, and then we're like, "Wait a minute, you don't have any skills in this job that you're in, and I have all of them," right? So, yes, our household is an enterprise, and I think the good thing about that framework is not only that it, speaks to us and the way our brains work naturally, but it also means that I've heard from a lot of women that it gets through to their husbands or to the men in their lives because it does have the statistics to back it up. It has the cold hard numbers. And so, I think it's also a great conversation starter in your relationship because I am rooting for your relationship. Like if you have a partner who is invested in making it work, I am rooting for that. But I think that it does if you are unhappy, if you are exhausted at the end of the day, if you're depleted, if you're like the woman in my book, the story I tell where she says, "I haven't been for a run in 4 years since my son was born," and meanwhile her husband is swimming for an hour every day, right? Something has to change.
Yes. And I'm going to add we talk a lot about the separation shift, which is what the term that we kind of came up with for the third after the marriage, you're still
Yeah.
doing domestic labor and
Yeah.
equity. And that's still relevant to this because you're
Yes.
still working together to raise children, right?
Yeah.
So like there's still tons of labor.
Yes, and the book is gonna give you also data on what happens to women when they get divorced, and the thing that's
Mhm.
so interesting in the data is that because I know when I was going through that shift, I was scared. I was like, "It's gonna be so hard as a single mom," right? And I had a friend who'd been through it before, he said, like, "You think it's gonna be harder, it's gonna be easier." And then I looked at the data, and the data shows that women's time cooking and cleaning goes down
Yep.
after they get divorced.
Yep.
How is that possible? You go from having 2 adults in the household to just 1, and usually she's the custodial parent,
Yep.
the primary,
Yep.
parent of the children. Well, because in a marriage that's not working, he's not sharing the household labor, he's creating it. He's creating work to be done. So, for men who wanna save their marriage, you better make sure that you are taking more off of her plate than you're putting onto it. But for women who are considering going through that shift and you are scared like I was, or you're in it and you're in the hard part because you've gotta walk through, the tough part, the only way out is
Yep.
through before the clouds are gonna part, and I know that it gets really tough. Hopefully, the data gives you some reassurance that it is actually gonna get easier on the other side.
I was literally just talking about this with Eve Rodsky yesterday. And because somebody was asking her about it and she tagged me and she was like, "Olivia, what do you think?" And I was like, "Nope, the data says that women still do the same amount of child, caring and all of that, but their domestic labor, everything, divorced women get the chance to watch TV more and they
Yeah.
sleep more, right?"
They sleep more because they're
Yeah.
not taking care of, the other child, the full-grown adult in their
Mhm.
house, and you don't realize how much you do for your household. Like, when you're making a meal, you're not just thinking about your kids, you're thinking about your husband's preferences, and it's shaping everything that you do.
Everything.
And then when it's just you and the kids, you're just like, "Oh, I can just zero in on this." And for me, even things like bedtime became easier because I knew what the limit was and I was gonna set and hold it myself. Everything wasn't a negotiation that was
Yes.
draining my energy way more than whatever help I was having from having an extra set of hands.
Yes, 100%. I literally could clip that out and play it 100 times for people because I think it's a really important point. And there are beautiful marriages that have a come to Jesus moment and decide it's not working and they figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is going to help them do too, because we are all about that as well. We always like to say your marriage can have a fresh start also. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to
Yeah.
remember
That's a
that.
great way to say it.
What do you want people to know most about this book?
What I want people to know is that the problem's not you. The problems are structural. And, I want us to stop blaming women. And I talk about all the headlines. When you think about all the titles of books aimed at women, they're always essentially blaming you. They're like, stop apologizing. Women don't ask. Nice girls don't get the corner office. And so I just want women to know that you are not the problem. The system is the problem. And I want you to know that if something is not working for you, it's not working for the family. It's not working for the household because you are a member of the household. You are a member of your family. And I lost sight of that. I made so many choices to make things work for my kids that ultimately didn't work for me. And what it really took for me to finally leave was when it became clear to me that it was no longer working for my, at the time, 4-year-old son. And then after I was divorced and I had my fresh start and those clouds did part for me and I saw how much easier my life was, how much happier I was, how much calmer I was, what a better parent I was. I got tenure at my job. I had new ideas. I made new friends. I felt this real sense of grief that I hadn't thought that I deserved it, that I deserved to make that change just for me. And so a big message to the listeners out there is to say, learn from my experience and just know that you deserve a different lived experience. You
Mm.
deserve to be the protagonist of your own life and to get your needs met and to have a life and a partnership that supports that. And so even though, it can be really, really hard to make a change and it can be really, really scary, you will get through it and your future self will be so grateful to the you that had the courage to say, no, this is enough and I deserve better.
This is what I'm saying. You need to just live in my pocket. I'm just going to carry you around. I think that the beautiful part of this book is that it's not marketed towards mommies and, mamas and all those groups, but it's really about the joy. We are deserving of joy, right? We are worthy of joy. And that's what it comes down to is that I always say, like, money can come and go, money will come and go. But your time and your joy, that's it. That's what life is about, right?
Mhm.
And so this book really gets to the bottom of how you can figure that out to make it work for your life because everybody's lives are going to look different in the long
Yeah.
run. It is such a beautiful book. It's called Having It All: What Data Tells Us About Women's Lives and Getting the Most Out of Yours. We will obviously put the links in the show notes. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? What else is coming up for you? We're gonna be best friends from now on.
We
So
are, and we have
okay,
so
good.
much to talk about, and this is
So much to talk about. What would you? I mean, you've been divorced, and obviously this podcast is for everybody because it's our book chat. But what would you say to a woman who is kind of gonna? I always like to ask this question to authors. If there's somebody that's listening to this and is nervous to pick up the book because they're afraid to open that Pandora's book, what
yeah.
would you say to them?
Well, I support you making whatever choices are right for you, and, the book is not saying, I, divorced a man and married a woman." That's not gonna be the right choice for everybody, right? So I
No, but for
support you
many
in
women, yes.
finding your own, best choice, your own story, but what the book asks you to do is to center your experience, to recenter your experience as the North Star in your life. And I think that that is a really radical thing to do for women, and it's a
Yeah.
scary thing to do. Um, but if I can tell you something that gives you permission to do it, it's that the biggest cure for my mom guilt was seeing my relationship with my son blossom when I was getting my needs met because I realized that what he needed more than, the two-parent family or the kind of ideal that I thought that he needed was for me to be okay because then I could be present with him and I could be the type of parent that I wanted to be. So there's a reason that the saying is like put on your own oxygen mask first. It's not because you're more important than the kid. It's because you literally can't put on the kid's oxygen mask if you pass out because you don't have oxygen, right? And so taking care of ourselves and our own needs, it is taking care of our kids and our family. And so even though it can be scary to do that, if you're like me and you can't make that change just for yourself, even though I want you to, and I believe that you have every right to, but just to understand that taking care of you does really affect the entire family And you are going to see that on the other side. And so if you can get through the hard stuff, because making a change is always hard, you're going to get to write your own story on the other side. And even financially, I think for a lot of women, the finances can be really scary because divorce is financially
Yep.
hard on women, right?
Yep.
But to go from, yes, you have the extra money because someone's earning extra money in the household, but if they're not actually sharing it and they're not actually empowering you
Mhm.
financially, then sometimes getting that court order for child support is actually better than having someone who, quote, pays the bills, but everything is a fight about money. So
Yep.
I just saw that in so many areas that, when it's not working, for the women where it's not working, the energy that you get back from everything being a fight is energy that you're going to put into starting a new career that's going to earn you money, being a better mom for your kids. And so, any area that you think might suffer, you're going to see that it's actually going to get new life and be reinvigorated by you getting that energy back for yourself.
Regeneration, right?
Yeah.
I think I'll end with this is it's so important to remember that we have no idea what's happening in people's homes, right? And so I feel like this book is a great reminder for us that like we're all in it. We're
Yeah.
all trying our best here. And so we just can't judge because I say that all the time too. Like just because you have two adults in the house doesn't mean you have two incomes in the house because you don't know where the money's going.
Yep.
And I was fine after my divorce because we weren't spending a lot of money on things that we didn't need.
No, 100%. No,
Yeah.
it's so true. And so, that and just because you have two set of hands, it doesn't mean you're actually sharing the load of
No, it was
parenting because
way harder for me to be a married single mom than a single
yeah,
mom, and
yeah,
it's hard I think if you're not in it and don't see it, it's hard to understand, but we're here to tell you that, so listen to
yeah.
us. Having it all is fantastic, we cannot wait to have more people check it out. If you have questions, please let us know. Thank you so much, Dr. Lowe, for being here, we appreciate you, and we cannot wait to keep having these conversations that are so essential.
Thank you, and I can't wait to hear what people think of the book, so thanks for having me on.